คัมภามานสาอิเมสคาเรดุกัตถพันนาคาลภูเตปาทิการหาทุอัมหาคังติหารทังหิทายสุขายอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวะพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะโตธัมโมธัมมังนัมมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณะสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุตตโรปุริสธัมมสารถิสัทธาเทวมนุสสานังพุทโธภะคะวะธัมมังภะคะวันตังอะภิปูชยามิธัมมังภะคะวันตังศิรสานามามิสวากขาโตภะคะวะโตธัมโมสันทิฏฐิโกอัคคาลิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอปัญญิโกปัจจตังเวทิตาโพวิยุหิธัมมังธัมมังอะภิปูชยามิธัมมังธัมมังศิรสานามามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆปุจปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยายาปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสามิจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยาติตังจัตตาริปุริสายุกานิอาตาปุริสปุกลาเอสาภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยภาหุเนโยตาคิเนโยอัญชลิกานิโยอนุตตรังปุญญาเขตังโล lokasa tamaham sangha abhipujayami tamaham sangha sirasa namami. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views. The pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, here we go, another question and answer session. And the questions are more than yesterday, oh my goodness. But first of all, that for those of you who want to meditate and put some eye shades on, we have 3 eye shades here, courtesy of Singapore Airlines. Whenever I go, I collect them. Because I know it'd be for the people on a Singapore retreat. Some people prefer meditating with eye shades, so they're here for you whenever you want them. But first of all, question number 1. Oh my goodness, it's a big one. Dear Ajahn Brahm, I am conflicted. I have been approached to conduct a course of mindfulness to corporate leaders. I'll be paid for it. While it sounds interesting, my conflict lies in, I learn it for free from you. Yeah, I demand 10%, whatever you get. I learn it for free from you. It is free given by the Buddhas. How can I earn from it? Of course, I can always donate off the whole sum. Now, look, sometimes there's only a certain amount of monks around and nuns, and actually that sometimes that not enough monks actually do enough teachings. And so, we're in a difficult situation. The demand outstrips the supply of teaching monks or teaching nuns. You try your hardest to teach monks and teach nuns, but that it needs to be done. And you're living in the lay world, you need to make some money. If you didn't make any money, you would not be able to give any donations. So I want you to be rich, but not too rich, just middle way. So that is fine, as long as you do it. And like anything else you do in life, a lot of time you got your education for free. Many of you in places like education is usually free in Singapore, isn't it? You got to pay. Really? Used to be free, yeah. For when you're old like me, all free. But we give things for free and we don't expect anything back. So if you can make a livelihood out of it, fine. More importantly, we learn it to alleviate suffering and to teach corporate leaders whose ultimate goal is to earn more dollars. It seems like I am commoditizing Buddhism and diluting the teachings. Please advise. It does actually get some corporate leaders to be better corporate leaders, and if they're better corporate leaders, they don't cause too much trouble in this world. In other words, they can be honest instead of like Lehman Brothers or whatever else was really messing around. So one of the things when I was a school teacher, I remember one lesson I learned. They said, you may be teaching maths or physics, but you're also teaching who you are to your kids. You're giving a moral lesson as well. So when you're teaching corporate leaders, you may be teaching them a mindfulness, but you're also teaching them a lot of morality as well, by just the way you present yourself, the way you do things. And that's a marvelous way of actually just trying to get just more ethics in the corporate world, more trust. So that way, it's a good thing to do. So I will give my stamp of approval for 10%. If Buddha is still a teacher, if Buddha is a skilled teacher, why he teaches regarding psychology, suffering and the causes of suffering, and not positive psychology, happiness and the causes of happiness. It'll become a depressing teaching compared to other hopeful and thinking religions. Hopeful and thinking religions, well, some of the other religions, you've got to leave your brain at the front of the church to go in there. I mean, just the idea that this world was created only 5,000 years ago, it's ridiculous. And the dinosaur bones were put down there. They put all the fossils there. That was all done in the creation, just to confuse people. So if you actually think about it, and I remember it was in one of the great Christian theologians, it was St. Augustine. He was a really sort of interesting fellow because he said some great things. He said, Christianity is illogical. He said, therefore we have to have faith. Because you can't prove it through logic. But that whole argument, it was illogical. He was saying, A means B. He was trying to say it's illogical, but he was saying it's logical to believe. It was very easy for anybody to actually to see the
the fallacy of his argument. But a lot of times, that I see what you're pointing to. You say suffering and the cause of suffering, but you know, when I started teaching in Australia and in Singapore, when I did the Four Noble Truths, I turned them around. I called it for marketing. Happiness, a cause of happiness, sometimes it's unhappiness. Why are we unhappy? Those are the Four Noble Truths, but starting with number 3, first of all. And all it was is just understanding that, yes, people just want to be inspired. And sometimes, even when I was a lay Buddhist, the Four Noble Truths, suffering. But why are all these monks happy? And sometimes you saw a happy monk, and people would say to him, you don't know what you're talking about because you're not suffering. You're not really practicing. And that was just totally off. So when you see someone who's wise, it's a happy person. And for anyone who doubts that, there was, and I have to quote the sutras because this is wonderful. We have very accurate, well, not 100%, but pretty good translations into English and into Chinese of what the Buddha actually said. And one of those sutras is the Dhammacchedya Sutta, Monuments to the Dhamma. It's in the middle leg sayings of Majjhima Nikaya. And I often quote this sutra because it was one of the Buddha's chief supporters. He was King Pasenadi, who lived in Savatthi. And of course, the Buddha spent most of his rains retreat in Anathapindika's monastery, the Jeta Grove, just outside of Savatthi. And so once this king, he'd finished his business and he just decided to go and see the Buddha. So he went into the Jeta Grove monastery and he asked if the Buddha was in. He said yes. He's in his hut meditating, but you're the king. If you knock on the door, he's sure to let you in. Just as me, even if I'm meditating in my cave, if Queen Elizabeth came and knocked on my door, I'd probably let her in. Maybe. But not any of you guys. But anyhow, so the king knocked on the door, the Buddha let him in. And the king started bowing to him and kissing his feet. The king kissing the Buddha's feet. And the Buddha said, what are you doing that for? And he said, I've been coming to this monastery just all my life, and I just love this monastery and all the monks. As a king, it creates so much happiness for me coming here. And he said, why do you like coming here? And he said, I like coming here rather than any of the monasteries of the other sort of religions at the time. Because in this monastery, the king said, all the monks are happy and smiling. That's why I like coming here. And the Buddha replied, said, yes, that's what you can expect when the monks are practicing meditation well and developing insights. And that really sort of hit me, that this is what's supposed to happen if you meditate and you get insights. You're supposed to get happier and happier. Which is why that people in the time of the Buddha like going to see the Buddha in the Jeta Grove monastery. That's why it grew. Not because they were miserable and saying, suffering, you're going to go to hell, you're all going to burn. Some people used to say things like that, and it's absolutely ridiculous and crazy. And so that's what I understood as Buddhism from the very beginning. And I read, and it's right there. Buddhism is supposed to be a happy religion, otherwise it would have never taken off anywhere in the world. So this is one piece of advice for you. Never trust a miserable teacher. If they're miserable, unhappy, and they keep scolding you, then they haven't got it, they haven't understood. And certainly that was what I saw very early. That I wanted a teacher who was happy and wise. And if they hadn't got their happiness together, they had nothing really to teach me. They still had lots of learning to do. And that's why you went to see someone like an Ajahn Brahm. He's just such a happy monk. And that's why he had lots of disciples. That's why I get into trouble. I'm a happy monk too, and I get into trouble because too many disciples. Anyway, never mind. That's my bad karma. So anyway, the teachings, it's not just suffering. It's the end of suffering. It's meditation, lessening stress, being happy, getting wise so you don't suffering in this world, being free like a bird, no attachments, nothing makes you unhappy. People come into your life and they leave again. Your loved ones die. And sometimes, Buddhists get infected by these other religions, and you start grieving and crying and stuff like that. One of the things which really impressed me when I was training in northeast Thailand, this monastery was the local cremation ground. So, we took it over as a monastery. The villagers were very happy. And, every week there was usually a couple of funerals. And just you get the wood from the forest, you put the body on top and you light it. It's just so simple. You see the whole body burn, all the time. An interesting thing, you learned a lot about cremations. When you do a cremation, you never put the corpse on its back. It's always on its side. And the reason is because when it gets burnt, it's to do with the muscles. If any doctors or people who know about the physical body will tell you, once it burns, if it's on the back, it starts to sit up. And I've seen this. It actually, they put it on the side, but because it's on a funeral pyre, it sort of turns over. And so the body actually sits up, and the hand comes up. Whoever's the end of the finger, they freak out. So always put it at the side. So we had this a lot over there, and where was I going with this? Oh yeah, thinking religions. But all those funerals for 9 years I was there in Thailand, never saw anyone cry at a funeral, at a cremation. You saw them the day before. The villagers will come in, someone's died today, you go to their house that night and do some chanting. And you see them there, they just lost their husband. And they weren't old people, just young people died as well. They went crying. You saw them at the funeral, you saw them the next day in the village on arms round. And it was an eye-opener for me. There was no such thing as grief in those villages in northeast Thailand. They had never been colonized by any Westerners. And that traditional Thai Buddhism just did not have any grief at all. They totally accepted life and death. You get born, you die. What's the big problem? And it's amazing, just grief is culturally conditioned. It's what's added on to loss. And because I've seen it so many times. People, they die, yeah, we miss you, but they get on with their life. They accept that from the very beginning. It's not a surprise to them. And as well as that, they just understand. They usually meet each other afterwards. It's just par for the course. But when I've seen here, because one of my jobs is to conduct funerals, and sometimes I've often seen kids come into the funeral, and they're playing around, they're being naughty like children are, and they're really happy until they see their mother looking really sad. And I've seen that the kid look into the mother's eye and get so confused and afraid. Why are you hurting so much, Mum? And they learn grief from their parents. It's culturally passed on to your kids. You'll cry, you feel grief, and your children just take, that's what I'm supposed to do when somebody dies. And it becomes their conditioned response. It's not necessary, and it's such a shame you do that. Does crying help anybody? As everybody knows, you cry for yourself. You don't cry for the person who's dead. You're crying for yourself. You're suffering. What are you doing that for? So it's a totally different way of looking at life and death. And that's one of the reasons why the real Buddhists, I don't know what you do in Singapore, but real Buddhist funeral services are good fun. There's so much good fun that after I gave my first couple, the funeral directors, the professionals, they came up to me and said, Ajahn Brahm, when I die, I want you to do my funeral. I'm not a Buddhist, but that's much better than these other morose and sad, and the priests come up there and so, it's so sad. We're with you in your grief. we understand how sad it must be that your mum has died. And it's a terrible thing that she was such a good woman. And there's the old joke of, the wife, was listening to the preach say about such a good man who's died. And she said, no, son, can you just go and check that really is your father in the coffin? Because it wasn't like that at all. There's a trouble and I must admit that was something, from my own life, my father's own funeral. He was an atheist. I used to ask him about what do you think about God, and he was in the Second World War. He said, I saw so much suffering, real suffering. People complain about terrorist attacks. Okay, I mean, these cities in England under the Blitz, bombs, thousands of them going off every night. Sometimes a house next door, the neighbours totally demolished, blown up to smithereens every night. And they just got on with life. And sometimes you read the stories of people in London. I remember just this one fellow, he's one of the disciples over here, he passed away some time ago. You know him, Al, Bruce Crowley. He was in the New Zealand army, he got captured and he escaped, and he got back to England, and he was a soldier. And then the first day in London, the air raid sirens came, and he just dived into the nearest underground station. He ran in until he realised no one else was running for cover, only him, and he was supposed to be a soldier. He was acting like a coward. Everybody else, the air raid sirens were going on, the bombs were going off, they were just at the bus stop reading the newspaper. And he said, that they had this wonderful attitude. Well, if you die, you die. We're going to die one day. They say, and if your number's up, if your name's on the bomb, it's going to go off anyway. And that was so inspiring for people actually living in that land at that time. Well, my father just, said, well, he's seen so much suffering, he can't believe in a God. No God will allow that to happen. But when he died, my mother, she didn't really know what to do. It's like everyone else, you just do what everyone else does. So we got the old preacher from the crematorium, and I was there, and the preacher was saying, oh, Mr. William Betts, he was such a good father and such a kind man. And I felt, I was only 16 at the time, and because it was not really the right thing, I really felt going up and say, what the hell are you talking about? You didn't even know my father, okay, you're saying nice things, but you're not being truthful, you're not being honest. You just say you didn't know him. But, that was, because this was my father, and it was his funeral, at least I wanted honesty. And so the whole thing for me, the funerals of the Christians which I saw, there was just something very bad about it, something wrong. From the very beginning, you celebrate a life. And that's actually a big thing these days. We come here to celebrate a life, not to mourn a loss. But it's always been like that in Buddhism. It's not just a new fashionable thing. And so Buddhist funerals are much more fun. We tell jokes. And when I say that, I ask people, when you have your funeral, would you like people to laugh? And people say yes. They want to remember me with a smile. I don't want you to be sad when I die. People who come to your funeral, your loved ones, your friends, you want them to be happy. So that's a whole attitude towards death. It's really weird in the West. And one of the weirdest things which happened, I was on retreat, range retreat some years ago, enjoying myself to the max, meditating, blissing out. And when I came out, even the monks were upset. So what's happened? Haven't you heard? I said, I've been on retreat. Princess Di is dead. Well, what do you expect with a princess with a name like that? But even some of the monks were upset, and all the lay people, I got some people ringing me up, oh, Ajahn Brahm, help, Princess Diana is dead. I said, did you know her? No, I didn't know her. Are we related? And you can see that was a total media build-up. It was just the media made that happen, and the whole culture of universal grief over someone we didn't even know. And to me, that was absolutely madness. So look, when somebody dies, wonderful, they're free, especially when they're old. They lived a good life, they're 80 or 90. Oh, that really is a celebration. Well done, a great life. You lived so long. You should be so happy they lived a good life. So you don't think of the death, you think of the life. Not the 2 bad bricks in the wall, but the 998 good bricks in the wall. And when you look at it that way, just someone dies that's a really good person. It's been such a pleasure to have known you. Thank you so much. Well done. And it's like just a big celebration. The end of the concert. The football team has won the World Cup. Your grandma has done the same in her life. Won the World Cup of life. Well done. You feel so happy. Why not? Isn't that a much more sane response? So because Buddhism has done that, that's why it is a happy religion. And it's not as if you have to get these stuff out of Buddhism to promote it. It's always been there. And some of the other places, they're always just really miserable religions to begin with. Dear Ajahn Brahm, is there a difference between these 3? Being mindful, being conscious, being Zen, and thank you. That's 4 things. Being mindful, being conscious, being Zen, and thank you. It's all just being. So take off the mindful, take off the conscious, take off the Zen, take off the thank you, and just being. That's all you need to do. Wow. This is the deepest question. Whoever wrote this one, come up here and I'll bow down to you. Whoever wrote this is already enlightened. They've reached the nothingness. The blank sheet of paper. Wow. That's so profound. Ajahn Brahm, I feel a great tiredness in my heart when in meditation. Should I then focus on great emptiness or the fatigue in my heart? It's not your heart. It's just your body's heart. Body's sometimes tired, sometimes got energy. So it's only a tiny bit of you. So don't focus on the tiredness of your heart. Instead, focus on the rest of the body. And sometimes you look at that tiredness and think, oh, poor heart, you've been beating ever since I've been born. And if you've been working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for all the years you've been alive, wouldn't you be tired? So you just tell your heart, okay, I give you permission to be tired. You deserve it. So a lot of times that when you have something which you add the negativity towards, that's why I'd play around with these things. You make what is for many people a negative and make it a positive. You're tired, great, it's wonderful, be tired, heart. And then after a while, because you're allowing your heart to be, it doesn't feel tired anymore. It's not negative, it's just part of life. So that's what I would do. I'd say, heart, you're allowed to be tired. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm. Can 32-part meditation lead to jhana? What is the consciousness or sensations or alert level when first and second jhana? Whoever asked this, have you got jhana yet? When you get it, then you can ask the question. People got all these ideas of what jhana is. Look, all you need to do is nothing. So sometimes we want to do something. The 32 parts is actually 31 parts by the Buddha, and then they added an extra one. Interestingly, in the time of the Buddha, the people didn't really have much idea of the brain. So 31 parts, and they left out the brain. And then, I think that's one of the reasons why they were so wise in those days. They didn't pay too much attention to the brain. And now, they added in the commentaries, it came 31 parts to 32 parts, they added the brain. And that was where the trouble started. But all you do this for is just to look at your bodies. So it's just the heart, it gets tired, it's just your liver, it's just your hair. It's not important, it's just body, that's all. It's not who you are. It's great when you just look at this body. And if ever you have the opportunity to go to an autopsy and see everything taken apart, and look inside there, and it's mind-blowing. The first autopsy I went to, I didn't realize just how small the brain is. And you get this idea, the brain is huge, it's tiny. And that's a brain. And so this little thing gives all the trouble. And then they open you up, and it's really fascinating to see all the little parts and how they all fit together inside. So, that was actually part of the training for monks, actually to go and see an autopsy. And, the trouble is these days that people just have this cult of the body. And so, no, you can't see my grandmother because it's sometimes special. I don't want her to be disturbed. It's only her old body. It's just like a car wreck. Of course you can go and see it. So in the first years here, we could go and see it, but now, people say, no, the relatives will complain. So we can't see it anymore. But I remember okay, we go funny stories. The Bhante Ji, Venerable Gunaratana, he's a great teacher, lives over in Virginia in the United States. So one of his disciples, lay people, they heard about this. They said, let's try and go and see an autopsy. Who knows, we might be able to get in. So they turned up there at the local hospital and said, for religious reasons, because we're Buddhists, can we go and see an autopsy? We'll just be quiet, just to look. And they said, no, you can't do that. And they argued and tried to make a deal and something, but no way could they get in. So most of the people went home, except one of the disciples. He stayed around, to keep on trying. He really wanted to see one. And as this one guy came out, he said, can I see an autopsy? He was one of the what's it called, the workers, the people who help the doctors. One of the medics there, and he said, no, you can't. And anyway, I'm not in the right mood for doing that because, going through a divorce. And the student of Venerable Gunaratana said, you're going through a divorce. I happen to be a lawyer. I can help you with the papers. And, it's very expensive, getting a lawyer in the United States. He said, really? He said, yeah, do a deal. I'll do all the paperwork for you for your divorce if you let me see the autopsy. And so the guy said, okay. So, he helped him with the papers, and then, the guy took him into the autopsy room, dressed him up in the green, whatever they do. And, that he was around when they got the next autopsy. He was an African American. They didn't know why he died, and they were opening him up. And, they started seeing that, he'd been under many operations. They called him a piece of work. And then actually they were looking, and they found out the reason. They gave it a Latin name, the reason why he died. And this guy was a lawyer. Lawyers, they just cannot keep their mouth shut. And so when he heard this Latin name, he said, oh, that was, I forget, was that cancer or something? And everybody stopped and looked at him and said, who are you? What are you doing here? Because it actually meant, malpractice. It was a mistake. Some doctor had sort of snipped the wrong thing. And he said, oh, I'm just a lawyer. And everybody froze. Get out of here, quick! Because this was, a doctor had made a mistake somewhere, and there was a lawyer there who shouldn't be there. So he won't admit this. I mean, there's millions of dollars of suing. So they got him out there as soon as possible. And he wrote about his experience in the newsletter. So, it's so hard to go and see an autopsy, and that's one of the reasons why. But he said it was so amazing, actually, to see the body opened up. When you do that, you don't really feel, this is just a body, that's all. You don't get so attached to it. It's not such a big thing. Which means that, when you die, you die. That's it. Easy. It's not the first body you've had. And it's not the amount of life you live, the number of years. It's always quality of life. How do you use the time you have? And if a person's used that time allotted to them or given to them is really well, I really feel happy at funerals. When I go to a funeral and hear all the great things a person has done, even if they're only 30 or 40. I feel so happy. Well done, you made a good job of your life. But what I really sort of, saddens me is when somebody dies 60, 70, 80 years of age and they've been selfish and not generous at all and just a troublemaker. And I think, what a sad. They've got this beautiful human life and a great opportunity, they've wasted it. They're just arguing and being selfish and accumulating wealth. And they've got this incredible coffin with all these gizmos on the outside. It all gets burnt anyway. So, just those people, I think, what a waste of a life. So that's actually where, with all this 32 parts, we do that so we can look at this body for what it truly is. Nothing much. It means you detach from it. It's not important. You look after it, you care for it, just like a car which is you've borrowed or rented. You care for it, look after it. But you don't sort of overreact. I meditated and felt the pleasant feeling, ants crawling sensation, and getting stronger and stronger, the sensation getting so strong that it suddenly stopped. It was replaced by a peaceful feeling. I could not opt to prolong the peaceful stage. When the cause of the peaceful stopped, I emerged from my meditation. How to prolong the peaceful stage? Make a better Ajahn Brahm. Exactly. You don't do anything. You can't prolong it. You can interfere with it. But, it's the causes and conditions. So, you did the right thing. Well done. Just recreate those causes and conditions. Be more stable. It lasts longer. But you can't make it last longer. So it's a very standard what happens you meditate. The body starts to, let's say, like feeling like itchy or tingly. Your mindfulness is increasing and your body's about to disappear. And then it sort of disappears. You feel so peaceful. But again, you can't make it last. You just stay there however long it wants to last. Your roundness. Any ghost stories this year? Ha 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 ha. The last time I told a ghost story, people actually ran out. I remember last year, this retreat. Sorry? She's not here anymore. What ghost stories did I tell this last year? No, I had a little ghost video. Yeah, that ghost video, which was a ghost in an elevator. I think I emailed that to you, didn't I? Yeah, maybe you should put it on the BF website. I can just describe it to you. It was amazing. They had a video in a hospital in Thailand, and this nurse wheeled this patient. He's obviously had an accident. Had a cast on his legs and on his head and his arms as well. Obviously been in a big accident, and wheeled him in there, and the drip on him. This little Thai nurse wheeled him in there, and there was another patient also in the lift. And I asked, what floor do you want to go to? And they asked what floor, 14 or something. And the other person went to floor 13. There is no floor 13 in hospitals. It's an unlucky number. Just like on Singapore Airlines, there's no row 13 on Singapore Airlines. That's true, isn't it, Captain James? Never any row 13. So if ever you get a ticket on a boarding pass with seat 13A, you're in big trouble. It's fake. So anyway, the nurse, when it stopped at 13, she was a bit afraid. There is no floor 13. And it stopped there, but the doors never opened. And this patient just walked straight through the doors. It was a ghost. And the nurse, she collapsed. She fainted right there. But the patient, he was in a wheelchair. He had cast. He couldn't go anywhere. And so he was shaking and screaming, I want to get out of here. I want to go home. And then the next part of the video clip was, I forget the brand name, say, Acme Vitamins. If you take your vitamins, then you don't need to go to hospital. It was an advertisement on Thai TV, making people so scared of going to hospital. So they take their vitamins and supplements. So it's funny. L, I think I showed you that, didn't I? Can L? I think you saw that one, yes. So that's the ghost story. They use it just to sell things these days. The Ajahn Brahm. In Anapanasati there are 16 steps. In your book, Mindfulness, Bliss and Beyond, it is mentioned this is a complete practice that can lead to jhana, even enlightenment. How does or at what point that satipatthana comes in? How does Anapanasati, satipatthana relate? Or when do you know which to apply? Please read the Anapanasati Sutta. What is it, 108 of the Majjhima Nikaya, 118. I always get that wrong. I think it's 108. But if you read that, it actually says the first 4 stages of Anapanasati, watching a short breath, a long breath, calming the breath, and what's the last one? Releasing the breath. All that, so calming the bodily sankhara, feeling the whole breath, short breath, long breath, whole breath, and calming the breath. That's the first. And in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha said that is doing the first satipatthana because the breath is one of the bodies. It's body contemplation. He actually says that is equivalent to the first satipatthana of body contemplation. And 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th stages, you start to notice the piti along with the breath, the sukha, this is the bliss and the happiness along with the breathing. And you calm that bodily, so you experience a whole bodily, you experience the whole citta sankhara, the pleasure, and you calm that sort of pleasure. He said that is noticing Vedana, the second satipatthana. He said 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th stages equal the second satipatthana. And then the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th stages of Anapanasati. You experience a citta, that is the nimitta, the light which comes up, which is a reflection of your mind. I'll talk more about that later. And then you brighten that nimitta, you calm that nimitta, and then you release into a jhana. He said that is citta contemplation. 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th stages of Anapanasati equals the third satipatthana. And once you emerge from the jhanas, the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th steps is contemplating relinquishing, contemplating anicca, contemplating fading away with raga, contemplating nirodha, cessation. He says that's the last satipatthana, contemplating dhammas. And so the Buddha actually said specifically, and it's really clear, anyone who does the 16 stages of Anapanasati at the same time completes the 4 satipatthanas. They're not different. They are exactly the same. If you don't believe me, I've got a copy of the book in my room. You can actually see it there, and it's amazing. There's no difference there. At what stage do you do vipassana or satipatthana? It is satipatthana. Very good. Where is this? Is it true that some people cannot get nimittas? Do people ever go straight to jhanas? Sometimes they can go straight to jhanas, but it is encouraged, advised to go through the nimittas because then you know where you're going. It's just like sometimes you go somewhere and you can't find your way back there because you weren't really aware of what was really happening. So the nimittas are the best way to the jhanas. And everyone can do it. And sooner or later, and I promise you, sooner or later every one of you here will experience a nimitta. When you die. And you go towards the light. That is the nimitta, exactly the same. So I guarantee. If one is at jhana stage, is it possible to feel piti and sukha, still have feeling senses? You still feel the sense of the mind, the sixth sense, the citta. You don't feel the body senses. So you can, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching is turned off. All you have is just the mind sense. And of course, that is very beautiful. That's a piti sukha with the mind. So piti sukha is with all of the 6 senses. But here you're seeing the piti sukha, the joy, the bliss, just through the mind sense, the 6th sense, not the others. Would meditation be able to prevent or slow down dementia? I think Dania she sent me an email today saying, yeah, it's proven, it does. Was it you who sent me somebody sent me the email, I can't remember now. Who actually sent me the email? And what was the email about? I think I've forgotten now. I'm only playing around. Yeah, it's been proven that if you do meditation, it stops the aging process. That's why, this is absolutely honest, I'm a monk, I keep my precepts, I cannot lie to you. In February, I celebrated my 750th birthday. Honestly, with the Buddha, in February last year I was 750. And they even got me a cake. Happy 750th Ajahn Brahm. Do you believe me? Very good. 750 months since I was born. 750 months. Okay. But anyway, it also stops the aging process, or at least it sort of delays it. So that's why I look so young. Why do people want to hurt and be mean to others and expect to find happiness? That's a great question. It doesn't make any sense to me. Sometimes, again, we do that because it's conditioned into us. Sometimes your parents say, if they hurt you, go and hurt them back. It's dog-eat-dog world. If you don't hurt them, they'll hurt you even more. And of course, you know where that leads to. If you act like that, in the next life you become a dog. So, why do we want to hurt them? We get frustrated. We want to control others. So we think that by controlling others, by making them afraid of us, that then maybe they won't hurt us again. That's why we try and hurt others, shout at others, try and control others, try and make other people afraid of us. Just, Claire! Sit up! Don't do that anymore. She knows me, but sometimes it's so hard to act angry. You can't do it. I haven't got enough experience. But sometimes people stand up and shout at you like that. And they try and intimidate you, make you afraid, so then they can control you. And that's all it really is. It's a waste of time trying to control others. So that's why people want to hurt and be mean. They're really stupid. And they just create more unhappiness for themselves and unhappiness for others. You never get successful that way. Ajahn Brahm, I've been meditating, breathing consistently for more than 20 years. You've been breathing ever since you were been born. I've been calm and peace, but not experienced jhana. What advice would you give? Don't try to get jhanas. Just be peaceful. Just let go. Jhanas are what happens. When you make peace, and the peace builds and builds and builds. But if you want it, you'll never get it. Okay, one of Ajahn Chah's great stories. And this is in good, bad, who knows. At last I managed to print it in a book. I was trying to find some place I could insert it. It doesn't really belong in the book of stories, like that. But it's one of the most profound teachings that Ajahn Chah gave. In the mango forest, he said the monastery was a mango orchard. And the mango trees were planted by the Buddha, and you don't need to go and climb the tree to get a mango, to shake the tree or throw sticks at it. In fact, if you do any of those three things, the mangoes won't fall. He said, if you want a mango from the mango tree planted by the Buddha, all you need to do, the only way, is to sit perfectly still under the mango tree. Open up your hand, and a mango will fall. That's brilliant simile. If you want jhanas, you just have to sit perfectly still and open up your heart. And then a jhana will fall into you. If you try and shake the tree, climb up it, throw things at it, come on jhanas, come on. Never ever will it fall. Sit perfectly still and open up your heart. And all these things happen to you. And that is So accurate, so profound. That's why people, they can meditate for years and get nowhere, because they're not sitting still. They're trying to do something. Trying to attain something rather than trying to let go of things. Wanting rather than just being peaceful. And that is the whole trick of meditation. If you understand that, you don't need to come to any more talks. Just sit there and do nothing. And all these things happen to you. You don't want anything. You're happy. Anyway, what if I never have jhana, does it mean I can never be enlightened? You have to get jhanas to become enlightened. It's very clear. It's in 64th Sutta, Mahamalunkyaputta Sutta. You can't get enlightened without jhanas, no more than you can get to the heartwood of a tree without going through the bark and sapwood. So said the Buddha. So jhanas are a prerequisite. You have to get jhanas if you want to be enlightened. But how do you get jhanas? Letting go of wanting, being still. That's what enlightenment is, the end of all craving. So jhanas are a taste of enlightenment. At least you've let go of craving or wanting anything. You're totally content and peaceful, at least for a short while, at least temporary. If you can't do that, of course you can't become enlightened. The only reason you haven't attained jhanas yet is because you still want things. You're still controlling, you're still trying to make it happen. That's the only reason why. And if one day you totally give up, let go, like this one girl, I've told a few people who she is, but she was on one of the executive retreats over in Phuket years ago. And, she'd been meditating all week, getting nowhere, just getting frustrated. You get close, you can't get, any further. And she really put the hours in. And then I think we just, we had the last meeting and closed off the retreat, photographs, everything finished. But the taxi she had taken to the airport, because I think she was going to KL from Phuket rather than to Singapore. She had a direct flight somewhere. And so she was waiting for her taxi. And so, she said, well, nothing else to do. Just packed all the bags already, just kill time. So she was meditating in the hall. She said, just killing time. At last she wasn't trying. And after the hour she came up to me. Ajahn Brahm, oh, so wonderful. At last. Oh, Ajahn Brahm. It was like that, really sweet, She just got her first deep meditation. And I like telling this story because she'd been meditating, all the retreat in Phuket. Not sort of, going shopping or going down to the beach. She's really putting in the hours and trying, getting absolutely nowhere. And it's only when she decided to kill time, gave up all hope, let go, then everything happened. It's a great story. Same the story of Ananda trying to get enlightened. I like telling that story to you too, because it's very encouraging. Now, the disciple of the Buddha, living with the Buddha, looking after the Buddha for 25 years. The greatest teacher, and he still wasn't enlightened. After 25 years, imagine being in this retreat center for 25 years, and you still haven't got anything. And this is with Ajahn Brahm, this is with the Buddha, the boss. And after 25 years, when the Buddha died, he thought, what's the hope now? Can't get enlightened when the Buddha's around. No way. So, he spent the next sort of 3 months or so. He was a go-to person, organizing things, talking to people. And one of the monks there, Mahakassapa, decided to have a big meeting of all the monks to try and get all the teachings, collect them all. Because, you've heard something else, you've heard something else. Want to get all the teachings together. And so they had a meeting of 500 monks. 499 of them were fully enlightened, arahats, many with psychic powers. The 500th was Ananda. They invited him because he knew so much, even though he wasn't enlightened. And so imagine your pride. Tomorrow you're going to a meeting. Everyone else is enlightened and you're not. Just like I sometimes tell the story at the last day of the retreat. Imagine everyone from Singapore, you're all totally enlightened with psychic powers except for you. How would you feel? That really sucks. That's terrible. So the following day he's going to have his meeting, and everyone else was enlightened except for him. He felt so bad. He decided he wouldn't sleep all night. He meditated all night, even though he was tired. Meditate, walk meditation. He was going to go for broke. He had to, because he'd feel so ashamed the following morning. He meditated so hard all night. When the dawn came, hopeless. No jhanas, no restless mind, sleepy, I don't know what it is, just the same as you. And so he gave up. He had a couple of hours before the meeting started, so he said, I'll just take a nap. He'd been up all night. And so before his head hit the pillow, he became fully enlightened, another arahat, when he gave up. And just to show he was enlightened, because, he just got enlightened. People didn't know, just the old Ananda, the same old. So he decided to make an entrance. He waited to come late. Everyone was in the meeting. They were waiting for him. He hadn't arrived, so they locked the door. And he came in through the keyhole. That's called making an entrance. And they all realized, wow, what have you been up to? That's really cool. And you're enlightened. Welcome. So the 500 arahats, and he became the 500th. So we call that the Ananda method of enlightenment. And as soon as I'm finished here, you can try it. Laying down. Now, it didn't work this time. You can have many naps during the day. And every time you're taking a nap, it's an opportunity to practice the Ananda method of enlightenment. We say that story because he let go. At last he stopped trying. He gave up. No wanting, no expectations. Now, those are telling you important methods of becoming enlightened, getting jhanas. You sit under the tree perfectly still, not wanting things. And then these things happen. You want, and that tree shakes. Nothing falls. While practicing mind sweeping or body scanning, I rely on the instructions, toe, may you be well, happy, etc. I find it difficult to silence the mind and transition to contemplation. Please advise how I know I'm doing it right. You know you're doing it right if it gets peaceful. Remember, the mindfulness gives you feedback. If the body's relaxing, you're doing it right. You can feel that. If the body's getting more tense, you're going in the wrong direction, so turn around. If the body's becoming delightfully relaxed, you get some happiness, then great, you carry on. Same with the mind. If you're getting more tense, more angry, more upset, you're going in the wrong direction. So the mindfulness gives you feedback. And you don't need to be that wise to know that this is the right direction. You feel more peaceful, more happy, more light. It's the right direction. Carry on. And actually, when you do the body sweeping, it's okay to say, toe, may you be happy and well. Ankle, may you be happy and well. Yeah, you're doing something, but it's not very much at first. At least you're not thinking about what you're going to have for dinner when you go back to Singapore, and how you're going to invest your shares when you go back, and all the other stuff which you keep thinking about. At least, you're focusing on something which is real, your own body. So that is okay. Can you share with us how you feel about regression, past life, in between lives? Is it something that would help hinder this path, or does it not make no difference? I am tempted, but I am hesitant. Thank you. It's great when people remember their past lives. Even I won't say who it is, but someone who was here for the 3-month rains retreat. One of the lay people, they got past life memories, and they've been checking it out. Another one, it seems to be true. They were just telling me the other day, and I won't say who it is, you told me. Great, these things happen, because you don't want to say, because it's up to them to tell. And there's another guy. I told about that in the talk over in Singapore. And he got back to his past lives, and as a result of that, he says, I've got to keep my 5 precepts now. And it's really made him a very strong Buddhist. Before, maybe if my friends, have a drink, I'll have a drink as well. But, he realizes, because with the knowledge of his past life comes the understanding of the importance of karma. And he's like a Westerner, an ordinary guy, from Perth. You wouldn't know that, he was a Buddhist or got these memories. And he says, 5 precepts are really important. And he has to keep them. And also service to the community. That's the other thing he's doing. Before being a typical Australian, we maybe give a donation when there's a telethon on the TV or something, and that's about his social service, but he's a busy man, he's got other things to do in life. Now he's remembered his past lives. He just wants to serve as much as he possibly can and keep the precepts and make something of his life. It's incredible the change which you see in him. So that's why it sometimes is good for you. You maybe think you're a Buddhist, but if you can remember your past life, your commitment to Buddhism, and I don't mean just saying you're a Buddhist, you'll start to practice when you realize, what's involved. So it is helpful, and that was just anecdotal evidence. How does one overcome jealousy? With wisdom. Why do you want to be jealous about anything? Sometimes the monks are very smart. They're not jealous. They don't want to be abbot. There's never any coup. I go overseas to Singapore, and I haven't been deposed when I come back because they're sensible enough that I'm jealous about them. Not having to do all this stuff. So what are you jealous about? Someone gets a promotion. Phew, that was a close one. And it's not you, because if they get the promotion, haven't you got enough stress already? You've got enough stress already, so what do you want more for? And then you get more money. No matter how much you get, it's never enough. So better the never enough you have already than the never enough you get with the extra stress afterwards you get promotion. Just be content and happy, and then you're not jealous. When you want something, then you look at other people and they have it and you get jealous. When you don't want anything, there's nothing to be jealous about. If everything is impermanent, would the earth also expire one day? It's going already. The earth is heating up. You wouldn't believe it today. It's not supposed to be so cold and rainy in October. So, maybe Singapore's heating up, but Perth is cooling down. So please, travel around more, burn more fossil fuels, and then the next BF retreat in October won't be so cold. I shouldn't say things like that, especially when it's recorded. I get in big trouble. So the earth does expire, just science does. I remember hearing the sun, it's a big nuclear reactor, fusion reactor, and we know what's going to happen to it. It's going to get hotter and it's going to expand. Now the sun is going to expand in size. It's going to completely sort of get bigger and sort of swallow up Mercury. And Venus, it doesn't get that big that it gets into the orbit of Venus, but Venus gets vaporized and so does Earth. We're all going to get vaporized. And all of Jhana Grove is just going to be vapor and dust thrown off into the edges of the universe. All of your mother's ashes in these big, expensive pagodas and stuff where you keep them, they're not going to stay there forever. Everything is just going to disappear. All the Muslims, the Buddhists, Bodh Gaya, it's all going to be vaporized and go into space with no record we've ever been here. Isn't that nice? Just total emptiness, from nothing to nothing. So that's the end of this universe. Or the end of this earth anyway. So it's nice, it's not going to last. What are basic human instincts that we are born with, or is everything conditioned? Now that is a fascinating one, because girls conditioning and boys conditioning. Are boys always conditioned, to say play with guns and tanks, or girls always play with little dolls and houses? And apparently I think that people did these experiments, and it's only because that's what girls are supposed to do, that's what boys are supposed to do. It's conditioned into them, and sometimes some boys like to play with dolls' houses. And they think that's a bad thing to do. Boys aren't supposed to do that. Get back to your guns and toy tanks and stuff. we condition into it what we expect from people. So a lot of it is, just conditioned into us. But we've got our basic instincts, just of greed, hatred, and delusion. I'm not going to. This is going to take too long. Whoever wrote this, can you please summarize it? Executive summary. This is not a question. This is an essay. So please, whoever, I'm going to leave this in here. Just make it very small, please. And so you can summarize the main points afterwards. It's getting late. And people have to get back to the Ananda method of meditation, just in case. Normally, I'd be able to focus on my breathing, but thus far, while I'm here, I can't seem to focus, be it sitting or walking. For example, when I sit meditation, I try to just breathe. My mind is very active and keeps flashing many random images. I do not have any problem bugging me, but my mind just too active to quiet down. Could you share how to deal with this, please? Don't go looking for the breath. Don't try and do anything. So remember what I've said so far. First talk. Don't want anything. Even good things. If you want to watch the breath, you're creating suffering for yourself. You're striving. The mind is not peaceful when you want something. And this morning, just be in the present moment, the place where you can't want anything. Instead of trying to focus on the breath, what are you experiencing now? Focus on that. You know that in my first book, Open the Door of Your Heart, there's the story of the Emperor's Three Questions. Remember that one? Emperor's Three Questions. When is the most important time? Who is the most important person? Right in front of you. What's the most important thing to do? Care. Use that for your meditation. What is the most important meditation object? No. The experience right in front of you right now. Sloth and torpor, restlessness, ache or pain, noise, whatever's right in front of you right now is the most important meditation object in the whole world. Now's the most important time. What are you supposed to do? Care for it. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing. How you experience it, that is a trick in meditation. Nimittas, sloth and torpor, a sort of a weird vision, that is not important. How you react to it is important. You can't change life, but you can change the way you look at it. So the Emperor's Three Questions is a great way of meditating. Now is the only time you have. Forget about trying to watch the breath next. Forget about jhanas, they're in the future sometime. Now is the most important time, and whatever you're aware of right now, that is the most important thing in the world. Just care for it. That stops all wanting, stops all aspiring for things, and stops all judging. As I was saying in the first talk, you think this moment is not good enough, you want something better. You think the tree has to be perfect to be lovable. This moment is the only one you have. Whatever you're experiencing, whatever it is right now, give it maximum importance so you don't want anything else. And I guarantee then you'll be still and the jhanas will just fall into you. And you'll be enlightened this evening if you can do that. Give it a go. While doing sitting meditation, sometimes I feel like I'm expanding or tilting or sometimes floating. I feel very light, though I'm also aware that my body is still sitting on the cushion. Could you please explain why, how these experiences could occur? That's a part of the course. What it is your perception is becoming free of your conditioning. I call it perception getting its wings. When it happens, enjoy, because you get some weird things happening and it's enjoyable. Sometimes meditation can be boring, watching your breath, watching the nimittas. But when these things happen, it's fun. You feel yourself expanding. Just expand as much as you like. That's my problem, because that happened to me. I was meditating and I felt my body was expanding. And someone disturbed me and I got stuck. It's amazing how many excuses you can come up with. But it does happen, you feel like you're expanding, falling into the ground, rising up into the air. And again, you're perfectly safe. Just enjoy the feelings. It's just what happens. in meditation. After a while, they settle down, you get very peaceful. But it's a nice stage. When I meditated, I saw total darkness without any thought. Am I in the stage of nothingness? Who cares where you are in, what stage? Don't give it a name. Were you enjoying it? Was it beautiful? That state of darkness, give it importance and care for it. That's all you need to do. You can give it names later on, because you need more experience to find out exactly what it is. Because you say the state of total darkness, there's no such thing as total darkness. All it's like is going out from a lit room into the darkness. It takes a while before your eyes can adjust to the darkness, and then you start to see things. So stay in the darkness until you can start to see what's there. If a person can no longer commit sexual misconduct, adultery, is he or she a stream winner or a once returner? How do you know you can no longer do it? Because sometimes people think like that, and they get themselves into trouble. Because sometimes the only reason you can't commit sexual misconduct, adultery, sometimes you haven't had the opportunity, or you haven't had Viagra yet, or whatever it is, because you're old. But is that really why you can't have sexual misconduct or adultery? Sometimes the only time that... I think I misunderstood the question over here. You can't have any sexual thoughts and stuff when you are a non-returner. But I think you're saying here about keeping your precepts of sexual misconduct, adultery, the fourth precept. If you can no longer break that fourth precept, are you a stream enterer or once returner? Actually, it's really unlikely if you're a stream enterer you could break any precept, because it just stop you. But you can break precepts as a stream enterer, but because you lose it for a little while, you forget. But you usually have to confess pretty much. You can't hide it. That's what they say. But the more advanced you are, the less likelihood you will do that, because it's a stupid thing to do. Why do you want to commit sexual misconduct, adultery? It hurts so many people. So it can be done, but it's very, very, very unlikely. So that's the answer there. Very, very unlikely. Last question, what is the purpose of walking meditation? Is it the same as sitting meditation, to quieten down the mind? Or is it for the training our mindfulness to turn off the autopilot of walking so it can be aware of every moment and cessation? Besides the awareness of the feet, do we also be aware of our breath? The last question first. No, only one thing to be aware of at a time. So if you're aware of your breath and aware of your feet at the same time, you actually split your awareness. So focus on one thing, it's much better. So you don't have to be aware of your breath when you're doing walking meditation, just the feet is the best. And if you're just aware of your breath rather than the feet, then you don't know where you're walking. You don't step on things. So try and just be aware of your feet. That's the very, very, very best. And what's the purpose? Because it does enhance the mindfulness. It does learn how to let go of all wanting, because you can't want very much on the walking path. When you actually sit down with your eyes closed, you can fantasize and dream and just plan. But when you're actually walking, it's much easier to keep your mind peaceful, because you've got to walk backwards and forwards. Because your eyes are open, it's very hard to fantasize, to plan and to dream. You can, but it's harder. So that's one of the reasons why it's nice to do some walking meditation. And it does help, because you sit a lot and your legs, your back gets sore. So it's nice to exercise, and it's good for your health as well. So there we go. That's the last question, and it's 11 minutes past 9. That's extra. We won't charge you any extra for the 11 minutes over time. So have a nice